Um, we're going to try and get through a lot today. I mean, there's a lot we can skip, I think. Picking up on I think that's a 6, 166 and 67. Hold on, let me make sure that's a 6. I don't like the way the numbers are done on this American edition. They're hard for me to read. 166 and 67. Harry is thinking. He's gone up to his room after the hearing. They get back, and Ron and Hermione have received, and Harry and Ginny and Fred and George. What have they received from Hogwarts? Beginning of the year letters, right? Tells them books they need, all that kind of stuff. What did Ron and Hermione get that Harry didn't get? Their prefects, okay? And that doesn't sit well. And Harry starts to think about that, bottom of 166, and notice, we're told. Well, let me go back to the middle of 166. I don't have time for this, but if he had remembered, if he had thought about it, would he have expected? Not this, said a small and truthful voice inside his head. Harry's thinking, did he think himself superior to everyone else? Did he really believe he was better than Ron? No, says the small voice. Was that true? I'm better at Quidditch. Okay. But I'm not better at anything else. Well, that was true. What about outside lessons? So leave school alone. How are Harry and Ron different? What about those adventures he, Ron, and Hermione had? Well, Ron and Hermione were with me most of the time, says the voice. Not all the time, though. They didn't fight Quirrell with me. So, first book, they didn't fight Quirrell with me. Second book, they didn't take on Rilla and the Basilisk. Third book, they didn't get rid of all the Dementors. Fourth book, they weren't in that graveyard with me. I've definitely done more, Harry starts to think. But maybe, the voice says, maybe Dumbledore doesn't choose prefects based on how many times people have gotten themselves into a load of dangerous situations, etc., etc. Okay? So Harry kind of sulks over this stuff. Mrs. Weasley, in the next couple pages, mentions to Moody about the boggart in the desk in the drawing room upstairs. He says, yep, I see it. Want me to take care of it? She goes, no, I'll take care of it later. Okay? So they go down for the party. We didn't discuss the party, right?
Okay. I have a question.
Yes.
So the fact that he sees it with his eye like through the desk, does that mean he's seen it in its like original form, not being shapeshifted?
Yeah. Yeah, in its original form, it's just kind of what's a ghost look like? It's just kind of a vapory mass. Okay? Yeah, it's got to come out. It's got to be revealed, and this is part of Celtic lore. Boggarts like dark, hidden. They're kind of like spiritual cockroaches. They like dark, hidden things. You turn the light on, and they kind of freeze and stuff. Okay, so party downstairs, 172, 73. Moody comes up to Harry. Now, I don't want blue marker. I want red. Moody comes and shows Harry a picture of the original order of the Phoenix. Okay? So we're going to get a bunch of names. And we see, there's Moody. Okay? Who else? There's Dumbledore, Albus, Brian, Percival, Wulfric, Dumbledore. Have to separate that from the brother. Okay. Daedalus Diggle, Marlene McKinnon, okay, killed 2 weeks after this. Frank Longbottom, Alice Longbottom. Harry thinks about what he now knows about the Longbottoms. Okay. Top of 174. Emmeline Vance, name we're going to hear again later. Remus Lupin, Benji Fenwick, Edgar Bones. We've already heard the name Bones once, right? Madam Bones, who was present at the trial. Okay. Sturgis Podmore, we're going to see again. Caradoc Dearborn, Hagrid, Alpheus Doge is going to be very important in Book 7. Gideon Pruitt and his brother Fabian Pruitt. Anybody know what relation they are to somebody?
Molly Weasley's brother.
They're Molly Weasley's brothers. Original name, Molly Pruitt. Harry's going to get, which one? Fabian's watch, I think, for his 17th birthday in Book 7. Pruitt's, Aberforth, Dumbledore, Dorcas Meadows, Sirius, and then Harry sees Peter Pettigrew, James Potter, Lily Potter, and anybody else? Don't think so. Okay. So, now look at what he says. Go back to those names. Marlene McKinnon, page 173. Killed 2 weeks after the picture was taken. Okay? Frank and Alice Longbottom. For all intents and purposes, I think it's fair to say, killed. Even though we're going to see Alice Longbottom later. Okay, not killed, incapacitated. All right? So, if you want to put a little asterisk by their names, that's fine. All right? Emily Vance, Lupin, Benji Fenwick, okay, he copped it, only found bits of him. Edgar Bones, okay, he says, got him and his family too. Sturgis Podmore, Caradoc Dearborn, he died 6 months later. Hagrid, Alpheus, Gideon Pruitt. Notice it took 5 Death Eaters to take him and his brother Fabian. Okay, kind of implying pretty strong, pretty powerful, etc. All right, Dumbledore's brother Aberforth. There's Dorcas Meadows. Voldemort killed her personally, so something going on there. Sirius, Pettigrew's still alive. James and Lily. Assuming I did this correctly, look at what this shows us. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 people. Of those, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 are dead. 50% mortality rate if you joined the original Order of the Phoenix. Right? What's this chapter title? The Woes of Mrs Weasley. Why? Because right after this, Harry goes upstairs after Mrs. Weasley does. And he sees, he walks past the room and he sees, Mrs. Weasley and a body, 175. But it can't be Ron, because he sees Ron spread eagled on the floor. But Ron was downstairs. Ridiculous. Crack. Ron's body changes into Bill's. Ridiculous. Crack. Bill's changes into Mr. Weasley's. Notice, a trickle of blood running down his face. Nice. I never even caught that before. Nice little bit of foreshadowing. Okay? No. Crack. Dead twins. Dead Percy. Dead Harry. Well, it's nice. I mean, she thinks of Harry as one of the family. Okay? So, Lupin comes up. Sirius comes up. Top of 177. She says, Harry, I'm so sorry. What must you think of me? Not even able to get rid of a boggart. Don't be stupid. I'm just so worried. Half the family's in the order. Right after we get this. Okay? Half the family's in the order. If the past is prologue to the present, it's kind of telling us a fourth of the Weasley family is going to be wiped out. Okay? Doesn't happen, by the way, for those who haven't finished all 7 books. So, and what's going to happen to Ron and Ginny if Arthur and I, cop it? Lupin, don't worry. We're better prepared than we were last time. Notice who wasn't in it. Snape wasn't mentioned. Interesting point, by the way. Is this picture before Snape turned? I think it is. Okay? No Weasleys. Arthur and Molly weren't in the original order. We don't know why. They're old enough to be. Okay? They're not any younger than James and Lily were, or Sirius and Remus, or Peter Pettigrew. Okay? Lupin's not like the last time. We're better prepared. We've got a head start. We know what Voldemort's up to. Notice, every one of those statements, you can take the negative and say, that's what it was like before. Before, we weren't as well prepared, we didn't have a head start, and we didn't know what Voldemort was up to. Why didn't they? To go back to Denise's thing. Because I don't think at this point they had Snape as an inside man. And now they do. Still they do. Right? Even though we don't hear about it much. All right?
Why wouldn't McGonagall be in it?
It's an interesting question. Because she's clearly in it later. I mean, she's in it this time. No idea. It's a very good question. Why not McGonagall? Why not Flitwick? I mean, Flitwick to be, Charms teacher, he's got to be pretty good at what he does. Okay? I mean, you got Hagrid in it. What good's Hagrid other than sheer size? Can he do intricate spells? No. So, just kind of interesting, or some of these others that we're going to see later on, like Daedalus Diggle. Daedalus Diggle comes off as kind of a foppishing, moron, or Elphias Doge also, right? But we're also going to see who else, in the current one. I mean, we could go through and list all the current ones. You got Kingsley, and you got, Tonks, and we are going to have a body count, by the way, at the end of book 7. All right? So, Sirius tells her, don't worry about Percy. Bottom 177. He'll come around. When does he say he'll come around? When Voldemort moves into the open. That is, when Voldemort really reveals what he's doing, okay, the Ministry is going to be begging us to forgive them. And I think what Sirius means by that is the Ministry isn't evil. It's not a bunch of secret, Nazi sympathizers, so to speak, right? And he's going to tell Harry later on, the world isn't divided between good people and Death Eaters, which suggests, there's a continuum, there's a spectrum. You could say, absolute good over here, absolute evil over here, and where do most people reside? Somewhere in the middle. Or they shift kind of back and forth. Where's Percy right now? He's kind of, like those beads in the one light that has joined, he's kind of sliding a little bit over to Voldemort's side. Not that he's a Death Eater or anything like that. So, chapter 10, we get introduced to Luna. We get introduced to Cho again, which I'm going to, skip. We get introduced to the Quibbler. And we can skip the rest of that. Sorting Hat's new song. This is where we'll get bogged down. Pages 204 to 206. So, we're going to look carefully at what the hat says. Because I think this is one of Rowling's most brilliant things that she does in the books. And she does do some brilliant things. She also does some pretty stupid things. Little errors and things like that. But this conceptually is just masterful. In times of old, when I was new, when Hogwarts barely started, the founders of our noble school thought never to be parted. So, when you read this song, think of two different sets of terms. Terms that imply division or disunity, and terms that define or suggest unity or, if you want, community, togetherness. Okay? And I'm not going to go through and write them all down because it'll take too long, but I will point them out. So, founders of our noble school thought never to be parted. Parted, that would be over here under disunity, division. Never to be parted. The phrase could then go on this side, okay? United over here by a common goal, they had the self-same yearning. You can even say self-same over here. To make the world's best magic school and pass along their learning. Together, there's unity, we will build and teach, the four good friends decided. Never did they dream that they might someday be divided. For were there such friends anywhere, Slytherin and Gryffindor. Now, I don't know when you first read these books, if you were 11, 12, like a lot of students your age are, or were. But I can't help but wonder, upon first reading this, after, the reading of the previous four books, you read that and got, what? How could Slytherin and Gryffindor be best of friends? They seem like complete opposites. Okay? How close are they, though? What does the Sorting Hat do for Harry? It could be great if you were in Slytherin. In other words, there's not a big difference between the two ideologies, let's say. To be bold and daring can get borderline on, showing ambition, in other words. The one thing that really separates them is the Gryffindorian idea or practice of chivalry. Chivalry, can always be summed up ultimately as standing up for the little guy, standing up for the person who can't stand up for him or herself, defending the defenseless, right? Where do we see a Slytherin defend the defenseless? Doesn't happen, okay? We see Gryffindors do it. We see Hufflepuffs do it. We even see Ravenclaws do it to an extent, Right? So, were there such friends anywhere as Slytherin and Gryffindor, unless it was the other pair? Cool. So how could it have gone so wrong? How could such friendships fail? Why, I was there and so can tell the whole said sorry tale. Okay, so pause for a minute. Sorting Hat is speaking. How does a hat speak? How can it do this? Whose hat was it? Godric Gryffindor's. We're told in the first song. He did what? He whipped me off his head and they put some brains inside. Each of the four founders, how did they put some of their brains inside? Previous book. We get introduced to something that Harry is going to look into again here. The pensieve. What are we told magicians and wizards can do? They can pull their brains out, pull ideas out, put them in the pensieve. So just as they can do that, they can pull bits of their character, personality, however you want to put it. They put it in the hat and they mix it all up. Which, by the way, Gryffindor's hat, correct? There's a problem there in book 7. Because we're told, what are the surviving relics of the four founders? And the hat isn't mentioned. It's a pretty important relic, if you think about it. So, said Slytherin will teach just those whose ancestry is purest. What does just mean? He's just an enemy and deserves death. Frodo says about Gollum. It means only. Okay? So we will only teach who? Slytherin says. Purebloods. Okay? Ravenclaw. We'll teach those whose intelligence is surest. Notice, no qualification about the those. Right? There's no limitation to only those. Said Gryffindor, we'll teach all those. Notice the difference, the opposition of all to just. We'll teach all those with brave deeds to their name. Okay? Now, before we talk about Hufflepuff, look what the first three founders have said. Slytherin, I'm going to teach the purest blood. Ravenclaw, I'm going to teach the smartest. Gryffindor, I'm going to teach the bravest. So, how do they determine purest, smartest, bravest? And to do those things, what must they do to each individual student and to, let's extrapolate and go a few years after them, to the first years when they arrive? Well, the hat's going to tell us. So let me say I'm looking at somebody and I say, has brave deeds, is pure blood, is pretty smart. What must I do as the head to determine where she goes? I have to weigh all of those, right? And it's like the one that outweighs all the other. You go off to that house. Said Hufflepuff, I'll teach the lot and treat them just the same. What's meant by the lot? Teach them all. Smart, dumb. Brave, cowardly. Pure blood, mudblood. Doesn't matter. I'll teach them all. And notice, she gets another kind of thing. And treat them just the same. See, the others don't tell us how they're going to treat the students, but it's implied by the qualities they select. She says, I'm going to treat them all as equals. Okay? If it's not clear, it will be very soon. I think Rowling is telling us something. I think Rowling, if not overtly, she's covertly, she's supporting Hufflepuff, okay? More than the others. The differences caused little strife when first they came to light. Notice that language. When first they came to light, it's like the differences are hidden. We're going to pretend they don't exist. But gradually they get bigger and bigger and greater until they can't be ignored. For each of the four founders had a house in which they might take only those they wanted. There's an untruth in that statement, though. It says each of them takes only those they wanted. That's not true for Hufflepuff. So, what's another possible meaning in order to make what Hufflepuff says jive with what the hat says here? What's another possible meaning for I'll teach the lot? Bingo. I'll take the leftovers. Like, elementary school PE, and you got to make teams. And the teacher says, you're a captain, you come up here, the rest of you line up back there. You go first. Who gets chosen first? The most athletic person that somebody knows is out there. And then the second most. Who gets chosen last?
Me.
The gawky Nevilles. The Nevilles, right? Depends on what's being done, right? You got two teams, and the teacher doesn't tell you, this is for a math bee or spelling bee. Well, you're not necessarily picking the jock. You're picking the smartest kid in the class. In which case, the jocks are the last ones chosen. A little bit different, okay? But if it's a sporting or athletic event, you pick the athletic ones. So, for instance, Slytherin took only pureblood wizards of great cunning just like him. Notice the additional qualification now. Pureblood and cunning. Is cunning the same as smarts, intelligence, IQ? No. Cunning means what? What does it always imply? If someone is cunning, they use that smarts, that intelligence to do what? To take an advantage. Okay. How? To take an advantage doesn't have to be negative. Deceitfully. They trick people. Okay? And only those of sharpest mind were taught by Ravenclaw, while the bravest and the boldest went to daring Gryffindor. Notice Gryffindor now gets an appellation, Appellation, tied to his name. Okay? Good Hufflepuff. She gets one too. But hers isn't talking about, something one shows. It's something one is. Good Hufflepuff does what? She took the rest. So why does Hufflepuff go last? Seemingly, if we take this kind of literally, Slytherin goes first. Why? What's a hallmark of Slytherins? Ambition. Now that I'm going first. Cool. Okay. Hufflepuff just sits there kind of waiting patiently. Everybody else chooses, and she goes, all right, you, come over here. Come with me. Nobody else wants you. I will take you. Who ends up in Hufflepuff? the kind of people that Dobby is talking about when he first meets Harry. The dregs, the lowly ones of the magical wizarding world. I'm not talking about house elves and goblins and centaurs and things like, the lowly of, so to speak, the human wizarding world. Except, name a Hufflepuff. A major one. Cedric. And what were we told about Cedric? Loyal, just, and true. So, good Hufflepuff, she took the rest and taught them all she knew. Thus, the houses and their founders retained friendships, firm and true. So, Hogwarts worked in harmony for several happy years. How old is Hogwarts? We're told Chamber of Secrets, it's over 1,000 years old. How many is several? We talked about that with, Aunt Marge, because they drank several bottles of wine. It's more than one, it's more than a couple, it's more than a few. Is several 20? Is it 100? People usually won't go, I've got several bucks and pull out a $100 bill. No, it's less than 100, it's probably less than 50. To me, it's less than 20. So, out of its plus 1,000 year history, Hogwarts remained unified and as a community, probably less than 20 years of that. But then discord crept among us. Spelled this way. Is that really a word? D-I-S-C-H-O-R-D? Well, Rowling makes up words left and right. So why doesn't she make this one up? Because discord kind of implies what? Not a pleasing sound. Disharmonious. Okay? But she uses this, the real original spelling. Why? Because the C-O-R-D here has nothing related to music. It's related to this, as in cardiac. Okay? Discord. Broken heart. Discord crept among us, feeding on our faults and fears. What's meant by faults? Is that the kind of fault like, on our moral faults, our moral failings? Like, I'm an evil person and I choose? Could be. What's another meaning of the word fault? I'm from California. What is one of the characteristics of California? The state, not the people. How's it different than Tennessee? Other than being bigger and all these different, it's riddled with tectonic faults, earthquake faults. What are they? They're breaks in the crust. Okay? They show division between this plate and this plate. And what happens? Those plates come up against each other, whether it's a slip fault or a thrust fault. Okay? They get jammed, and they build and build and build, and suddenly, or like this, and you get an earthquake. It might be a small one, it might be a massive one. Okay? So these faults, notice, feeding on our faults and tears. The discord is the slipping. The faults are their rubbing against each other, not getting along. And what happens? It builds and builds and builds and builds until somebody snaps. The houses that, like pillars four, had once held up our school, now turned upon each other, divided, sought to rule. And for a while it seemed the school must meet an early end. What with dueling and with fighting and the clash of friend on friend. And at last there came a morning when old Slytherin departed. So, get rid of this image or this stuff. And this is where I think she's just brilliant. You know, you have a heart. Not a good picture of a heart. But a heart is made of what? 4 chambers. Right? There came a morning when old Slytherin departed, and though the fighting then died out, he left us quite downhearted. What happens when one of the chambers in a human heart stops working correctly? You go into cardiac arrest. You have a heart attack. So, Slytherin leaves. They're left downhearted. Hogwarts, at that point, is not whole. It's not complete. And never since the Founders' Four were whittled down to 3 have the houses been united as they once were meant to be. See, they're supposed to be whole. This is the brilliance. This connects this idea that she's talking about. I get shivers every time I think about it. It's just a stroke of genius on her part. Or I'm just reading totally into it, and it's a stroke of genius on my part for reading it into it. This connects to what we're told. I'm not going to use the words. In books 6 and 7. About what Harry must do, what Harry must seek. Okay, to overcome Voldemort. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, that's fine. You'll figure it out later. So, and now the sorting hat is here, and you all know the score. What do you mean by the score? Is it like 3-1? No. It's the musical score. You know how the song goes. Right? I sort you into houses. That's what I do. Because that is what I'm for. That's my purpose for existing. That's what I was made to do. But this year, I'm going to go a little bit further than that. Listen closely to my song. Okay. For those of you who've read them, think 6 and 7. Though condemned, I am to split you. Still, I worry that it's wrong. What does he mean by split? Okay. How does he split or divide? Where we rephrase that. What does he split or divide? There's 2 answers. Houses. Okay. That's one answer. What's the other one? Each individual student. First years. Okay. When Hagrid takes them across the lake in the boat, that's how first years arrive to Hogwarts. What are they at that point? They're just new first years. They're not Gryffindors and Slytherins and Hufflepuffs and Ravenclaws. They're all just first year Hogwarts students. It's when they put the hat on that what happens. Ravenclaw, Gryffindor, Slytherin, Hufflepuff. Okay? What does the sorting hat do to each student? Splits one. Why? It has to look at the student. It has to see what the characteristics and qualities of the student are. Though I must fulfill my duty and must quarter every year, still I wonder whether sorting may not bring the end I fear. Must quarter. I've got to divide the incoming first years into 4 equal houses. That is, they each get an equal number. But what must the sorting hat to do that? It must quarter each student. What you remember what Gandalf said to Saruman when Saruman said, "White, the white page can be overwritten, the white garment can be dyed. I am Saruman of many colors." Gandalf says, 1, I like white better, and 2, he who would break a thing to determine what it is has left the path of wisdom. What does the sorting hat do? It breaks each individual student to determine what it is. We find out later, book 7, where did the sorting hat want to put Hermione? I mean, it's a no-brainer, really. I mean, Ravenclaw. She's like born to be a Ravenclaw. Her name should, way back in the past, should be Ravenclaw somewhere. She's the brightest person there is, right? But she didn't want to be in Ravenclaw. She wanted to be in Gryffindor. Notice, it is our choices, Harry, far more than our abilities, that show what we truly are in the book 2. Okay? Harry got put into Gryffindor. Why? Because of that statement. Dumbledore asks him, why do you think the sorting hat put me there? And he says, because you chose it, essentially. Okay? Back to this. Though condemned I am to split you, still I worry that it's wrong. Though I must fulfill my duty and must quarter every year, still I wonder whether sorting may not bring the end I fear. What's the end he fears? Total division. Should I say this? No. It's going to bring up something towards the end of book 7, in the Battle of Hogwarts. We do here in the Battle of Hogwarts, one house sits out, essentially, with a very few exceptions. So, know the perils, read the signs. What did Dumbledore do at the beginning of the previous school year? He was reading the signs. And that's why he brought Mad-Eye Moody out of retirement. Where did we first see those signs? Hagrid has Harry, Hermione, Malfoy out in the Forbidden Forest for detention. First book. They meet Firenze and Bane. Have you seen anything weird? Mars is bright tonight. Yeah, I understand. Down here, close to Earth. Okay, we're going to see Firenze teaching, divination, and he's going to talk about how for the last 10 years, Mars has been getting brighter, and it portends war in the wizarding world. Okay? Know the perils, read the signs. Though warning, this is what our woke/cancel culture really ought to learn if they're willing to learn anything beyond their narrative. The warning history shows. History. If you don't learn the lessons of the past, Santayana said, you're doomed to repeat them. Okay? You've got colleges all around the country with segregated housing. Intentionally segregated. It's total opposite of what the whole civil rights movement was about. It's like we're intentionally doing what? Going back to the same errors that were made 50 and 100 years ago. Which means then what? We're going to have to make the same damn mistakes and go through the same processes. It's crazy. For our Hogwarts is in danger from external deadly foes. Notice the hat doesn't say it's in danger from within. Now, specifically, who's that talking about? Voldemort. Who else? Who's sitting right up on the high table? Umbridge. Who does Umbridge represent? The Ministry. Cornelius Fudge. I mean, she's merely a microphone for Fudge. She's just a spy, right? And we must unite inside her, inside Hogwarts, or we'll crumble from within. What did Dumbledore say? End of the year speech, previous book. He tells everybody there, you're all welcome here. And as long as we have the same aims and an open heart, what? We can defeat Voldemort. So you have to have the same goal. You can't have two opposing goals and have open hearts. You got to have the same goal, he says. But you've also got, what's the open heart part mean? You've got to accept others. Okay? And notice what happens almost immediately. They start talking. Harry, 209. It wants all the houses to be friends, said Harry, looking over at the Slytherin table where Draco was holding court. Fat chance. Yeah, well, now, you shouldn't. I mean, we all get along well. I mean, me and the Bloody Baron. It's because you're afraid of him, Ron says. No, I never, Okay. Again, we could jump to the end of book 7. And what do we see? Very end. This isn't giving anything away. The epilogue, which I don't think she should have written. We see people, platform 9 3/4, New Year at Hogwarts. Kids are getting ready to go off. There's Harry. I'm not going to name the other character. There's another character, and that character does a little bow of the head to Harry. It's a little acknowledgement. Okay? And that character is from Slytherin. What is that? It's a mark of respect. That's, we might not be best buddies, but I acknowledge your existence. Okay? We're going to see it at the beginning of book 7 with Harry and Dudley. Okay? Beginning of this book. Don't have time for this. When Harry followed Dudley, back home, his first words to him, after Dudley and his gang leave the park and they break up, and Harry comes up behind him, what does Harry say? Anybody remember? Hey, Big D. Shut it. Why does he call him Big D?
Make fun of him?
No. Well, possibly. That's what his gang calls him. Okay? Beginning of book 7, Harry's going to call Dudley Big D, but he's not going to do it making fun of him. He's going to do it suggesting, I'm part of your posse. I'm part of your gang. Doing what? Bridging the divide. And it's left out of the movie. From what I've been told, because I've not seen it. From what I've been told by many students, right? So, we get Umbridge's speech and such, and Hermione explains it means the ministry's keeping tabs on Hogwarts. We get the chapter Professor Umbridge, okay? We find out, Seamus Finnegan doesn't believe Harry anymore, nor does his grandmother. Neville comes to Harry's defense, and we get her first class. Course aims. We're told every year the university sends out a message at the beginning, the provost sends out a message at the beginning of the semester instructing faculty what they should include in their syllabus. It's what they should include, not what we must include, because this is all part of what's called academic freedom. See, I have almost 100% total freedom of what to do in this class. I've got to follow what I've designed as a course outline there, that kind of thing. I don't include 90% of what they say. Like I don't include stuff about the Hope Scholarship and what GPA. That's your problem. Whether or not you maintain your GPA to keep your funding, that has nothing to do with these books and such, right? So one of those things is we should include in every syllabi course objectives. That is, this is what you will learn by the time you end this class. I can't do that. Because what you will learn depends an awful lot upon what? You. I mean, I know, the course attendance policy is COVID and all that kind of stuff. You don't have to show up. Most people don't. My Tuesday, Thursday class, one of them usually has 4 people out of 25. So I did something yesterday, and I'm going to do it today to, benefit those people. What are her course objectives all about? Okay, this is one of the reasons I can't do it in this class. They're all theoretical, right? Does any one of them have something to do with their real world? Defense against the dark arts. How do you stop a dark art spell? Nope. Nothing. If it were, sophomore driver's ed, what would her entire course be about? Learning the laws of the road and how an automobile works. What would it not include? Getting in the car and driving. You could learn the laws of the road inside out. You could understand how an automobile works. You could be able to mentally take apart an internal combustion engine. But if it's a standard transmission and you get in and you've never sat and had to figure out clutch and accelerator in hand, you're not going to drive, no matter what, right? So Hermione wants to know, where's the practical aspect? And notice, 242, Umbridge. Are you a ministry-trained educational expert, Miss Granger? Hermione, well, no, but then you're not in any position to tell me what is the whole point of any class? Well, here's a question Hermione should throw back at her. Are you a ministry-trained educational expert? The implication is no. Where have we seen Dolores Jane Umbridge before? Sorry. And she was called Undersecretary to the Minister of Magic. She wasn't called teacher. She wasn't called educational expert. Okay? Kind of interesting. So Harry gets detention. Why? Because he has to stand up and say, Voldemort's back. He killed Cedric. She says, he's not back. He's dead. He says, he isn't dead. I fought him. He gets detention. So he has to take a note. Excuse me. Off to McGonagall. Page 249. McGonagall tells him, you got to do the detention, I can't stop that. And Harry says, but I was telling the truth. Voldemort's back. You know he is. For heaven's sake, Potter, did he really think this is about the truth or lies? But keeping your head down and your temper under control. Okay? We're going to hear that language of control all throughout this book. In fact, learning self-control is kind of the number one idea from here through book 7. Harry must learn to master himself. Why? Because it's only by mastering himself that he will ultimately become the master of death. And all 7 books are about learning how to die well. We're going to see people die poorly. We're going to see people die well. Okay? Harry's got to learn how to die well. Okay? we'll stop there. We'll pick up with Detention with Dolores. I put up a quiz. Don't do it today if you want, because we'll get through chapter 22, I think, on Friday. And it goes through chapters 1 through 22. It becomes active like 2 o'clock or so this afternoon. It's due Sunday night. It's the first of 2. Okay? The second one will go active, I think, something like Sunday, and it'll be due, I think, it's the following Sunday. All right. Are we good? Oh, before you leave, let me turn this off.